The Realm. Do you know what the Realm is? It's the 1,000 blades of Aegon's enemies. A story we agree to tell each other over and over till we forget that it's a lie.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back for another Game of Thrones Season 8 finale video. Well, we are only days away from finally getting to see how Game of Thrones comes to an end. Like I said in my last video, I will absolutely continue to make videos even after the show is over. I haven't made a whole lot of videos about the books as of yet, and we still have another show coming out about the Age of Heroes, so those are some other things that I could always talk about. I also want to start making some videos on some other things, but I haven't decided which other topics I will cover yet. I would love it if you could leave me some recommendations down below in the comment section. Anyways, let's get into today's video. As you can see by the title of the video, I want to talk about what the final scene of Game of Thrones could be. What do you think the very last scene could be right before the screen fades to black and we see the end credits? I actually made a video about this over a year ago, but now that we are only days away from actually knowing what it will be, I want to discuss it one final time. I want to go over some of the options I have been thinking about. At the end of the video, you can let me know which ones you think it will be, or if you have a totally different idea of your own. Now, if you think all the way back to the first season of the show, the opening scene started at Castle Black. This is, of course, when we were introduced to the Night's Watch as well as the White Walkers. That opening scene essentially set the tone for the entire series. We immediately knew that this would be a very dark and medieval fantasy story. Since this is where everything started, maybe it's where everything could end. Now, obviously, the Night's Watch is no longer what it once was, and as far as we know, the Night King and the White Walkers no longer exist. I think it would be very interesting if the final scene did leave us some sort of sign that maybe the White Walkers could return one day, but for whatever reason, I don't think the show will do that. I do happen to think the Night King and the White Walkers are gone forever. Something I talked about in my last video was, where will Jon Snow go now that it looks like him and Dany will not be living together? Well, based on the final conversation he had with Tormund, it did seem like he could end up back in the north. That is where he spent most of his time, not to mention that is also where he sent Ghost. Since Jon does not want the Iron Throne, and he did seem to separate himself from Winterfell and House Stark, maybe he does go live out the rest of his life at Castle Black, or somewhere out beyond the Wall. Jon could end up back right where he started, and like I said, maybe the show does the same thing. Since the opening scene started at Castle Black, maybe it ends there. Maybe we could see Jon Snow standing back up on top of the wall, looking out into the distance, reflecting on everything that has happened to him and his family. Since House Stark was the first family we were officially introduced to, then maybe the final scene ends there.
And which one of you was a marksman at 10? Keep practicing, Bran. Go on.
Don't think too much, Bran.
Relax your bow arm.
Now, it's hard to say how many Starks will be in Winterfell by the end of this last episode, but the show could end with a scene of the remaining Starks back at their home. They could either be standing on Winterfell's battlements or out in the Godswood. They have been the main family throughout the story, so I do think it would be fitting to end the series back at Winterfell. I wish we could have seen their family's Valyrian steel sword reforged before it was over, but it's not looking like that will happen anymore. Another final scene I think they could do is some sort of montage of the various locations around Westeros. We could get an aerial view of Eastwatch by the Sea, Winterfell, and even King's Landing. When you think about it, these have been three of the main locations in the story, and all three of them have been hit really hard over the years. We had spent so much time at the Wall, as well as Winterfell and King's Landing. If they do want to end this show by leaving us with a great sense of loss, but also a dream of spring, then they might remind us of how those locations had suffered because of all the battles, but also show us that they are having some renovations done in the final scene. They were already starting to do that at Winterfell the last time we were there. Now it will obviously take a very long time to rebuild King's Landing, but they could show the beginning stages of a community coming together to clean up as much as they can. Then, of course, if they want to go in the other direction, they could show us the deconstruction of the Iron Throne by having it melted down. The Iron Throne has always been considered as one of the ultimate symbols of power in Game of Thrones. It also represented the rise of House Targaryen, considered it was created by Aegon Targaryen and his dragon Balerion the Black Dread.
1,000 blades, taken from the hands of Aegon's fallen enemies, forged in the fiery breath of Balerion the Dread.
There aren't 1,000 blades. There aren't even 200. I've counted.
I'm sure you have. Ugly old thing.
Yet it has a certain appeal.
Even the Red Keep itself was constructed thanks to House Targaryen. The fight for who has the rightful claim over the Iron Throne is responsible for the loss of so many lives. Now we are at the very end of the current story, and we just saw another Targaryen burn down nearly all of King's Landing, including the Red Keep that her family had made. Maybe the last step is melting down the Iron Throne. It was created by one Aegon Targaryen. Maybe we can see it get melted down in the end by another Aegon Targaryen. That could be an actual sign that things will be done very differently from here on out. One other scene I think they could do at the very end might make a lot of fans happy, because I have seen many of you talk about this before. I am of course referring to Samwell Tarly writing the story of A Game of Thrones. Especially now that he is close friends with Bran Stark, he could access any moment in history that he would want. The final scene could show Samwell sitting alone, writing something down at a desk. At first, we won't be able to see what he's writing, but right as the camera moves over his shoulder, we could see him writing the words, "The End." Then, he closes the book, and on the cover it could say something along the lines of A Song of Ice and Fire, The Histories and Battles of Westeros, or something like that. We did recently get that scene where Bran talked about the Night King wanting to erase all the memories of mankind. That was followed up by Sam saying if we forget where we've been and what we done, we are not men anymore, we are only animals. Maybe that was foreshadowing Sam writing down all the major events from A Game of Thrones.
I wanted to ask
If you're going to write histories, Tarly, you have to do the research. If you want people to read your histories, you need a bit of style. I'm not writing a chronicle of the wars following the death of King Robert I, so it can sit on a shelf unread. What? You don't like the title? What would you call it then?
possibly something a bit more poetic?
Let me know if you have any other ideas for the final scene of the show. I think one of these could work, but maybe you know a better way to end the last episode. Anyways, I want to thank everyone for watching the video, and I also want to thank all of you for continuing to support the channel. I hope you all have a great day. I'll see you again very soon. Bye.